wanted to do this because Cassius, my grandson, who's 16 now, had asked me to write my life story. And I thought that was pretty daunting, but actually in the beginning of 2020, I started that. And I got about halfway through my childhood. I have about 40 pages. I had a pretty unique childhood, and people are always asking me to write about that. And then COVID came, and at the same time spring, and I just got just totally distracted. I thought the best thing I could do for COVID was grow a garden, try to grow as much food as I could. And I've been physically, I've had a lot of physical injuries lately, and so for the last few years it's been really hard for me to dig and do outdoor things somewhat. I broke my wrist in Peru, and I broke my sacrum and pelvis at an outdoor extreme skills camp with the boys. And so one thing and another has kept me from taking care of my gardens for a long time and my rock walls. The story of the house is that I was pregnant, 3 or 4 months pregnant, and I just had moved around so much. I thought, I just want to build a house for this kid to be born in, and I was 35, I think, at the time. It was 1981. So I was looking for a site, and I came to this place, and I immediately just loved it. And it didn't have any running water, it didn't have any kind of water developed or electricity. It had this old road, which is the old road before the bridge was built, for a driveway, which was very rough and complicated. And I hadn't exactly been getting along or seen eye to eye with the dad, Bjorn, and he didn't like the site at all. He just thought it was way too difficult. And so I thought about it, and I was somewhat on the, undecided. Mostly I just wanted to do it. And I came down one day, and I stood right where the house is, and there was a big mesquite bush right there, and I stood next to it, and I just said, okay, give me a sign, And immediately, this little hummingbird came, and it lit on my head. It just sat there. I was like, okay, I'm going to get busy now. So I just started in, and I don't think people really realized that I was determined that she'd be born here. And so I was down here alone quite a bit. I mean, JB and Dulcie were with me, and Dulcie was, I think, 9, and JB was probably 12, and we lived in a tent for a while, and then we eventually borrowed that bus, and we lived in a bus with about 40,000 flies, and I slept on the wood pile most of the time that I'd gotten from local milled wood, right back when we had a sawmill. And it's a small site, and it was actually smaller than it is now. I filled some areas in, but I started out, I dug an outhouse hole, and like a squatter, and we had a platform. I still just have an outhouse hole. I don't have a roof on it. So I've lived like that for almost 40 years now and like it. And then I dug out the seep. So one on this side of the house, the creek makes a big bend. And when there was a place that was like a spring, but I don't think it was the spring. I just think it was where the creek came up under in that crook. And so I dug that out, and I I had a gasoline pump, and I could pump water up the hill to some barrels, and that way I could gravity feed it back down here and have enough water to make adobes. And I just started digging. And when I started digging the foundation, it's about I think 12 by 20, maybe a little bit bigger on the outside. I just ran onto all these rocks, and it was almost probably half rock and half dirt. And so I, first off, had to do something with the rock because I couldn't keep it down here on the side. I didn't have enough room but to make 50 adobes a day. I could do that by myself. Pregnant, I could make 50 adobes a day, and I made an adobe form, and the adobes turned out to be perfect. I didn't have to add anything to them. So I built those steps coming down here, which are behind you. I call them the giant steps. They're kind of big steps. And I built those, and then I started building this retaining wall, which is also behind you on the east side of the house, and kind of dug the house down in the ground, the foundation. And I mixed up adobes down in the foundation inside of the room that became where Elsie was born. And people came and finally realized I was pretty serious about what I was doing, and people showed up to help. It was great. People helped me build the foundation, the footings, the walls of the footings, and we mixed all the cement by hand. And then we cut almost all the wood in the house was cut by hand. So eventually, some of the bigger pieces, like the doors and window bucks, we took somewhere and cut with the electric saw. But I put in all the windows and doors, I think, myself, which I had never done before, but did it. And when I started the house, I had $1,000 that I'd saved up, and people gave me windows and doors. I've since replaced a lot of the windows, but not the doors, and just started laying up adobes eventually. It was really, I love adobe. It was really fun to do. I stabilized the bottom 2 layers so that in case it flooded here, this is very close to the creek, which is why I'm here. Well, this was the first part of the house I built, and it had a ladder going upstairs, and it was 2-story, and the kids slept up there, and that was our bedroom. And Elsie was born right over where my desk is, with quite a few people here hanging out. I think I cooked breakfast, dinner for everyone, and it was kind of a slow delivery, and Robin and I played music, and finally something happened. But and she was like 9 pounds of 10 ounces or something. She was a whopper. And this was all unfinished adobe, which is pretty dusty to live in. And I had a wall here, and this is a little kitchen, kind of, wood stove, bed, and that was about it. Since then, when Dee and I came back. We remodeled 2 houses in town, 2 historic houses, really, 2 old adobes. So that was one distraction that kept us away quite a bit. The other main distraction that I've had is drip for the last 21 years, but before that, watershed activism, and before that, sanctuary activism. So I now have my whole office right here. I did most of my grip work right here when we came back after the kids. We lived in town on and off for 10 years in those houses remodeling. It was a big job. So this was windows, and her bed was right here, and then built the second half of the house. Want to go upstairs?
Yeah.
This is where it's really hot right now. So the kids lived in these 2 lofts for a long time, and then I had other kids. Well, you see, these are the boys' beds now when they come to visit. They love it here, and they feel really at home here, so I try to keep it just like they like it. I mean, they still even like their childhood books, at least Phoenix does. He gets all those Magic School Bus books out and looks at them over and over again. And then this used to be 2 sort of rooms. And then when we moved back, just made it into 1 big bedroom. And it's been really comfortable to have. I spend a lot of time up here. Munchie 2. Yes, Munchie 2. I know, you want something. Spidey. Anyway, it's got a lot of treasures in it. The whole house has a lot of things that people have given me that they've made, or honestly things that I got at thrift stores that are just such wonderful finds that I've been just hoarding. I feel like a hoarder. I've got a lot of baskets. I've always thought baskets were just like one of the most amazing crafts of all, because arts, really, because they're handmade and so beautifully designed, and even if they're made by the millions, they're still incredible objects to me. Beautiful. And what else do I have in here? Oh, just a lot of things. Some things that were my mother's. It's not always here, but this is a vibrating hospital bed that I got at a garage sale for $50 that saved me so many times when I was totally crippled. I was on crutches for 7 weeks after I broke my pelvis, and then later I was on crutches on and off numerous times with a pinched nerve. So that's why I'm so happy that I can actually dig and use a pick and work. This is what I'm working on right now, is restoring this wall. Almost a lot of this wall had fallen down. It was all full of periwinkle. I built this 30 years ago, both tiers. I have only done the 1 tier now. I just finished this, and I haven't even chinked it yet. And then basically I've rebuilt all this wall in the last month, but this. I'm pretty fast, because you can tell I just do it pretty quickly. The problem is finding all the rocks, because I had to dig. This all sloped down past here, and I had to dig all that out and then salvage the dirt and then put it back up here. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But this has been so fun for me. This is really what I like to do the most. I just come out and do this, and I have to make myself stop sometimes. I think I first got interested in stone building because when I was young, someone gave us a farm in Kentucky, my husband and I, and Gideon was a baby. And we moved to Kentucky, and we lived on a farm, and my husband became a riverboat pilot on the Kentucky River. And he was pushing these barges down the Kentucky River to Cincinnati through these German-made locks. They were like dry stone-laid, incredible locks and dams that were so impressive. I did a lot of going down the river with them, the kids and I, and Dulcie was born there, and that's why Dulcie's name is Dulcie Ravina Kentucky River Rock Clarkson, partly because people would say to me, they put Kentucky's so funny, they'd put their hand on my belly and say, "Oh, what's in there?" And I'd either say a watermelon or a river rock. So we named her that because she was born right in an old farmhouse right on the side of the river. And then later I went to both Spain and Ireland in the 77, and I went to see Gaudi's work in Barcelona, which was mind-blowing, and lots of stone buildings. I hitchhiked around the Basque Country, around northern Spain, and just saw houses that were built on huge boulders, stayed with people in their kitchens, ate with them, and that had boulders in their kitchen, and I don't know, that just was really impressive. And then I went to Ireland, and part of the time I took a horse and caravan cart around with Robin Parsons' mother, and we went to all these wonderful sites that were stone churches, whole villages that were made of stone, just the fences. It was just so awesome. Kentucky also, we had stone fences that had been made by prisoners, a lot of limestone, and then later I've been to Peru twice. I have a friend down there, so Machu Picchu and a lot of other sites, which a lot of people don't get to go to. I went to just to see the rocks. I read a lot about that culture of stone and some very interesting things about how they treated rocks. And of course I went to India. The place I liked the best in India was Mamallapuram. It's a town where all the temples down in Tamil Nadu are built at that place, are built out of one piece of stone, carved out of it. Just incredible, just so beautiful. So beautiful. That was wonderful to see. And then, of course, Chaco and Aztec and Mesa Verde, and recently we all went to Canyon de Chelly and rode horses in there, and just the phenomenal, for one thing, the comparison between these New Mexico and Arizona sites and Chaco is really interesting, the way they're laid out, their emphasis on sun, the way the buildings caught the sun, all of that. Anyway, I was just intrigued by all of that. So I stayed interested in rock. It's been my meditation when the kids were small, I would just, before they ever got up, I would just go outside and just start building and terracing. And the purpose of the terracing, as you can see, is to grow food in it, really. Mostly now I have ornamentals and herbs. But originally I grew food out here before the deer and all the animals discovered us. And the creek is right down below us, and the creek runs all the time and sometimes floods quite a bit. Can come up 15 feet in 15 minutes, which is notable when you hear it coming. A long time ago, after Dee and I did our permaculture workshop, we hosted a 2-week permaculture workshop, and people came from all over, and we built a gabion up there. It's somewhat visible, and I built on top of that. So my goal is just to catch as much sediment as I can. This was an arroyo, and Dee and I built this up out of the arroyo, and it has you'll see on the other side, stem wall. And the arroyo never ran significantly in many years, and I had it all terraced up above with fruit trees. But then we had this localized storm up above us, way up there at the top, and it ripped through here. I was here alone. It was really terrifying, actually. When it rains on a tin roof like that or hails, it's just incredibly loud. And I thought I was going to take the greenhouse off. Well, the greenhouse is kind of in transition because I just took out, I had these huge chard plants in here all winter. And I've just been taking them out so that these are all little seedlings. This is chard and spinach and lettuce and some cilantro it won't all go in the greenhouse for sure. It's too hot in here. But I did this experiment with these cucumbers. It's been crazy. I've had a lot of really big cucumbers in here. It was fun to do. They're kind of shading out the tomatoes, but the tomatoes are still, you can't see any right now, but they're still bearing. I did a lot of experimental gardening this year because I gardened in tubs too. These are all little Nanking cherry plants that I'm saving for people that ask me for them. And Elsie. And this is the mural. I took forever to do it, but I got around to making a mural on one side of the wall that's Green Man and Green Woman. And it's a fairy tale. I sort of started it for the boys, and I started with him. These tiles are from Mexico, and all the rest of this is Kate's. And then I got a lot of sort of odd leaf-like things in thrift stores, and then all those salt and pepper shakers. All those little vegetables are salt and pepper shakers. Wow. When I was growing up, my mother was very creative, and we did a lot of different art kinds of projects. She had a kiln and did ceramics, mostly things that were in molds, and then painted. But we were encouraged to be really creative, and she did flower arranging and was in the garden club, and we did mosaic. And I think the thing I didn't say is the real reason that I love this site and the reason I picked it is because of these trees, these 3 oak trees, and that big alligator juniper over there, which is very, very old. I just always had a real rapport and affinity with trees, and as a kid I used to talk to trees all the time. I still do sometimes, and they talk back. And so I just loved this site, and I loved the trees, and it was so rough down here. It was daunting. When I grew up in East Texas, and during the school season, we lived in town, a small town, and on our block, which is pretty close to downtown, there was a tree, and it covered at least 1/4 of the whole city block, and it was an oak tree, and it came all the way down to the ground with these long limbs and so all of us kids, so it was a total canopy, it was very private, and all of us kids played in that tree all the time. We each had a limb, we each had our toys and things in the tree. It was just a haven for me when I was growing up until I was about 12, and we moved somewhere else. And then on all the weekends, I spent all my time in nature because we had a lake house in a swamp. I grew up in a cypress swamp with alligators, and we did so much swimming, and I had a horse, and I would take her there in the summer and be able to ride in the woods, and it's all piney woods and incredible, hardwood forest with really beautiful. So that's really why I'm here.